Okay, welcome back. Let's dive into the material you've shared with us for this deep dive.
Yeah, we've got some interesting sources here today.
Absolutely. And our job, as always, is to help you unpack what's inside.
Hmm.
Today, we're looking at material that it raises a really fundamental question, I think. It's about how we talk about the costs of regulations.
Right. And specifically, the source zooms in on energy efficiency standards.
And it makes a pretty striking claim, doesn't it? It says that often political discussions only give us half of a story.
That's the core phrase they use, yeah, half of a story.
So our goal here is to explore that claim using this source, look at the examples, the numbers it gives.
And figure out what this perspective could mean for you, the listener.
Exactly. Let's unpack this.
Okay.
So right off the bat, this source lays out its main idea.
Hmm.
When we talk regulations, especially it seems, from a particular political angle it mentions,
Mm-hmm.
the public conversation, well, it often misses a big piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
We only hear, like you said, half of a story.
Yeah, it argues that crucial context is often left out.
And he gives a quick example of this, calling it a sort of linguistic trick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it mentions how sometimes bills might direct committees to cut funding for programs like Medicaid or SNAP.
Right.
Instead of saying outright, we're cutting the program, the source suggests this is a way to, obscure the real impact. Focus on the mechanism, not the result.
Interesting framing. But that's just setting the stage, right? The main event here is energy efficiency rules.
Exactly. That's where the source really digs in. And it starts by acknowledging a common argument
Which is?
that these regulations, well, they make things cost more upfront. Appliances, cars, whatever. Adding energy-saving features costs money.
Okay, and the source agrees with that part.
It concedes the point, yeah. It says it's technically true that regulations can raise those initial prices.
But there's always a but.
But, and this is the key point, according to this source, that's the half story. The other side is the savings.
Savings how?
Lower energy bills over the life of the product. The source argues that these savings are actually bigger than the upfront cost increase.
Ah, okay. So you pay a bit more at the start, but save even more over time.
That's the argument. You end up ahead overall. It's about the total cost of ownership, not just the sticker price.
Got it. So does it give a concrete example?
It does. It focuses on a specific action, an executive order from the Trump administration.
Right.
This order apparently cut or rolled back 12 different energy efficiency standards for, basic household appliances, things we all use.
Gold standards, okay.
Yeah.
And what was the reason given for doing that, according to this source?
Well, the source reports the stated reason was to save consumers money about $1 billion a year.
$1 billion?
Yeah.
How? By making the appliances cheaper up front.
That seems to be the idea presented. Eliminate the efficiency rules, companies might lower prices. But again, the source immediately flags this.
Is only half the story.
Exactly. Only half the story.
Okay, so this is where the source brings in its own analysis, its numbers.
Precisely. And it's quite a contrast. It calculates that, okay, maybe consumers across the U.S. could save around $11 billion total upfront on buying these less regulated appliances.
$11 billion up front, potential saving.
Potential, yes. But then it sets that against the other side, the increased energy use.
Because the appliances are less efficient now.
Right. And the source estimates this will increase utility bills across America by, get this, $43 billion
Whoa.
per year.
Okay, wait. So $11 billion potential one-time saving versus a $43 billion ongoing yearly increase in energy costs.
That's the calculation presented in the source, yes.
So the net effect then,
Yeah,
that's a loss, right?
a big one, according to this analysis. They calculate a net cost to consumers of $32 billion per year. That's the $43 billion extra cost minus the $11 billion potential savings.
$32 billion a year lost, not saved.
According to this source, yes. And it gets even more pointed.
So?
He questions whether that $11 billion upfront saving would even happen.
Right. You said potential saving.
Exactly. The source calls it hypothetical. It argues that companies, having saved money by not implementing the standards, well, they're probably not going to suddenly lower prices consumers were already used to paying for the more efficient models.
So the companies might just pocket the difference.
That's the argument presented, yeah. Which means the source claims the actual loss to consumers isn't the $32 billion net.
But the full $43 billion increase in energy bills.
That's what the source suggests is more likely.
Wow. Okay. Now, the source also talks about why this executive order might have happened, right?
Yeah.
And it uses some strong language.
It does. And we need to be really clear here. This is the source's interpretation and claims, not established fact or our opinion.
Understood. Absolutely. Just reporting what's in the material.
Okay, so according to this source, the action was taken for no reason. It calls the decision plain stupid.
Strong words.
Very. And the source claims the main motivation wasn't really about saving consumers money, but simply a political desire to undo standards put in place by Democrats. It literally says the action was because he just hates Democrats that much.
Okay. So a very specific, politically charged claim from the source about the motivation.
Exactly. We're just relaying what the source asserts here.
And it wraps up this part with a message directly to the listener.
Yeah, it basically says, get used to higher electricity bills.
Ouch.
And asks if this rollback was really worth it. Again, that's the source's concluding punchline on this specific action.
So connecting this back directly to you, the listener.
Yeah.
The argument in this source is that these specific regulatory changes could mean higher utility bills hitting your wallet.
That's the bottom line presented here, yes. The long-term costs outweighing any potential upfront savings.
So pulling it all together, what's the big takeaway from this material?
I think the core argument is that focusing only on the sticker price when we talk about regulations, especially energy efficiency ones, is really misleading. It's only part of the equation.
The half-story idea again.
Right. The source claims that the long-term costs or savings from how much energy something uses are often much, much bigger.
And that rolling back rules based only on maybe lowering the upfront price could actually cost consumers a lot more in the end.
That's the central claim, backed by those specific numbers for the 12 appliance standards, a potential net cost, mainly through your utility bills.
Okay, so this deep dive really surfaced a specific argument from this source that how we frame the costs and benefits of regulations matters a lot.
Definitely. It argues that focusing just on upfront costs tells only half the story.
And, in the case of these energy standards, could lead to consumers paying significantly more overall, according to this analysis.
It's a clear claim about policy framing and potential financial consequences for you.
So maybe here's a final thought for you to chew on based on what we've unpacked from this source. When you hear discussions about regulations and their costs in the future, how might you sort of look past just the initial price tag?
How could you try to understand that full picture, the potential impact over time, including those ongoing costs like energy use?
Something to consider. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.